This is Times Radio.
Carol Walker with you through till 1 o'clock in the morning, and the time now is 24 minutes to midnight. Now, the arts and entertainment industry is being hit harder by coronavirus than almost any other sector in the British economy, according to research by the Office for National Statistics. Labour is warning of a tsunami of job losses as many venues remain closed and more of Britain's world-leading institutions have announced redundancy programmes. The Tate and Sadler's Wells both announced more job cuts today. But what about the thousands of not yet famous musicians and other artists who are self-employed and have been unable to perform live for months? Well, earlier I spoke to Ed Ryman, a musician who performs under the name Philippa Childs and has had to abandon a series of major gigs. And also Philippa Childs, who's head of the union Bectu, which supports people in the arts industry.
So, I'm a musician. I write and release my own material, and then also work as a session musician playing drums for other artists. And then when I'm not doing that, I fall back on drum teaching. And I suppose, like a lot of people in my position, the pandemic sort of brought everything I do to a halt. When it kind of first came about, I had a whole year of tours booked, both for myself and playing for other artists, and they were obviously all shelved. And then the drum teaching that I fall back on, I wasn't able to do that because the place where I taught obviously closed down indefinitely because of the pandemic, and I was able to transition some of my students to online teaching, but then again that's it's dependent on the students having their own drum kit and setup and everything they need at home, which not a lot of my students do. So I was only able to take on a handful of those students. So everything I did just completely came to a halt. And at that time it was for a while that the government hadn't announced any self-employed schemes at that point. So it was very scary.
And you had some quite ambitious plans for travelling to the United States and so on.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was booked to go and play in the US at South by Southwest and another festival in New York, playing drums for another artist on the same label as me. And that actually, so it was. I think it was about a couple of weeks before everything got real that there were sort of there were rumours going around that it could get cancelled, and then the week before we were supposed to fly out, it obviously did get cancelled, and so the artist I was playing for lost a lot of money, which she wasn't able to recoup. And then, it was about a week after that we would have been out there that everything sort of locked down and went into high alert. So in the end, we were kind of like, for our own safety, we were like, maybe it's best that we didn't go. But obviously that didn't negate the sort of the disappointment. And then, knowing that everything you've kind of been working towards for a long time and this sort of, these kind of pinnacle moments in your career, just knowing that they've been suddenly taken away, it sort of didn't really sort of alleviate any of the sadness around that.
Absolutely. And then you were very concerned, obviously, about the loss of your livelihood as well. I mean, how did you cope? Did you get some government support in the end?
So in the end, I was able to get the self-employed income support grant, and also I was very lucky in that I received a grant from the PRS's Sustaining Creativity Fund, which went towards helping people in my position, and then also a small grant from Help Musicians, which is another charity working towards, well, as it says on the tin, helping musicians, which really helped. I mean, I guess one thing that I think a lot of people outside of the music industry, when they think of musicians and people in the music industry, I think there's sometimes this assumption that I think people think of like the Ed Sheerans and the Adeles and the sort of record label bosses with their Ferraris and stuff, and don't really realise that a lot of us, I think the vast majority of us work sort of month to month, and even in a normal year, you're not always sure if you're going to be able to pay the rent the next month. So it was a really scary time, and it was very, very helpful to be able to get that support, not just from the government, but also the people like PRS and who really were proactive in trying to sort of help the industry straight away.
OK, stay with us, Ed, because I want to bring in Philippa Childs now from the Bectu Union. Is this a similar story, which many of your members are facing similar difficulties?
Yes, absolutely. Many thousands of freelancers that we represent are actually in a similar position to Ed, or even a worse position, because you're probably aware that there are thousands, probably millions actually across the economy who weren't eligible for government support for whatever reason, who fell through the gaps and therefore have had no help during this period of time. Many of them are our members, and they've had a really difficult time, not only the sort of shock of their work suddenly stopping overnight, as Ed describes, but also, real desperate situations in terms of their finances, and with no sort of light at the end of the tunnel at the moment, because there's just no date, as you'll be aware, for live events to return at the moment. So it's a heartbreaking situation for many people across the creative industries.
What, if anything, are you able to advise your members who are finding themselves in those sorts of predicaments?
Yeah, so we have, throughout the period, throughout the last 5 months, we've been lobbying hard to, first of all, to try and persuade the Chancellor to fill the gaps in the two schemes, so that everybody who has, after all, paid their taxes could have some sort of government support. That hasn't happened, unfortunately. But then since probably the last couple of months, we've been also arguing for the arts recovery package that was announced probably 5 or 6 weeks ago now, and we were really pleased that announcement was made when it was. But as I speak to you today, there's still no money has reached either theatres or venues. And certainly not freelancers who have still been without. So many of them have had to take out loans or use credit cards, rely on their family or various charities that have thankfully been a lifesaver, as I'd said, during this period of time.
And it's not just performers, is it? I mean, many of your members are people like the sound engineers, the people who sort out the sets, all the rest of the infrastructure that goes into performing.
Yeah, so our members are both freelancers and employees in theatres and so on. And so both of those groups are facing a pretty torrid time at the moment. So currently we're dealing with about 5,000 people at risk of redundancy across theatres. We've had many hundreds of casuals have already been laid off. And the real problem is that for employees, because the job retention scheme is being phased out over the next 3 months, but the cash from the arts recovery package isn't going to be available until at least October. And as I speak, theatres don't know if they're getting that money or not, because they're only just going through the application process. So we've been saying to them that this money, you may get some of this money, it may be enough to enable you to keep on your staff, but they're arguing, they're saying quite rightly, I suppose, well, we don't know whether we're getting this money, so we can't pause redundancy consultation. So unfortunately, if that money was coming a little bit earlier, we think we could save lots of jobs in the industry, but also that we could be thinking about more innovative ways of getting live performance back, because I'm sure Ed will agree that he's absolutely desperate to be back playing music in front of an audience. And even if that has to be in a limited way with a limited audience, I think everyone who is a creative wants to be back creating and for so that they can earn some money, but also I think probably for mental health, so that they can use their skills and expertise.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, obviously it must be very frustrating and dispiriting not being able to perform. Have you been able to start playing at all?
Well, I mean, not really. I did a few things like live stream sets from home, and I am going to be taking part in an online festival, which again, will be me performing a set from home. But yeah, I mean, I've got a new album coming out in January, and this is the kind of time when you want to be out there playing, promoting it, and letting people know that that you're going to be releasing this music, but obviously we can't do that. And one of the tours that I was supposed to be playing earlier this year, it has been postponed to February, which will be just after the album. But even at that point, as Philippa said, for venues and things like that, it's still such an unknown that we don't even know if some of those venues will still be there. And if they are, it will most likely be sort of limited capacity. So then, you don't know how much that will impact on the venues being able to actually break even. So whether they'll still be in trouble then. And then there's also the fear that, well, after everything that's happened this year, will people have the confidence to come out to shows at that point anyway? So even kind of looking ahead, we don't know if there's an end in sight, but even if there is that end in sight, it's such an uncertain end that it is still quite dispiriting, even thinking ahead to when things will be back on track.
And have you found that tough to deal with mentally as well?
I have, yeah, definitely. It's the thing that you've kind of been working on for all your life, and you sort of work so hard to get to this point in your career, and then for it to just all be sort of, pulled from under you like a rug. It is very dispiriting. I mean, I've been quite lucky in that, because I was able to get a bit of support in the way that, I know a lot of other people working, like Philippa was saying, a lot of other people working in these industries haven't been able to get some of the support that I've had. But I've been very lucky to have got that support. So it's kind of, I've still been able to kind of keep my head above water and use this time to find out where I can put my skills to use in other areas, so that, if this sort of thing happens again, at least I've kind of got something else that I can be working on. So I've been doing a bit of writing for soundtracks and a bit of work on podcasts and things like that. But yeah, it is difficult to keep your spirits up when the thing that you've been doing for your whole life is just suddenly taken away from you like that.
And Philippa, presumably that is similar to the situation which so many other performers are facing, their loss of their livelihood, but also something that they've put a huge amount of effort into creatively.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's come as such a shock to so many people that actually, the reality is that their life is quite precarious. And I think one of the things that all of the unions in this sector want to do is to make sure that actually people aren't facing quite such a precarious situation going forward, because it has, as you say, I think it's had a huge impact on people's mental health. And much as though all of us have tried to spent a lot of time engaging with our members actually, and through webinars or providing some sort of training opportunities for them, some outlets in terms of how they're feeling and everything. I think it's important that when we come, when people do go back to work, are able to go back to work in a sustained way, that we don't forget about how it's impacted, particularly the freelance workforce during this period.
Are you worried?
I just wanted to add as well that so I'm a member of the Musicians Union. I would say that the Musicians Union have been brilliant in they've been sending out kind of daily updates of things that can help musicians both career wise but also mental health wise, and links to places that people can go to and just reminding people to take care of their mental health. So yeah, that's been a really great thing that the Musicians Union's been doing.
Philippa, are you concerned that some of your members may leave the industry altogether, may just give up on their ambitions, thinking that it's all too tough, and that we'll lose perhaps some great creative potential?
I fear that is the case, and we've done some surveys over the last few months that suggest that actually that is the case, because people have become very disillusioned, or they simply can't face a future which is so potentially precarious. So it's really disappointing, actually, given how much the creative industries contributes to the UK economy, that we haven't been in a position to provide the timely support